Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for the series finale of WandaVision, appropriately titled Series Finale. The series finale. It's actually even called the series finale. I liked it. First off, it has two post-credit scenes, just to let you know. So if you don't want those spoiled, I'll save those for the end. I'll kind of just go through the episode. But there was the mid-credit scene, and then there was the official after-credit scene. So you got post-credits and then post-credits before it got to like the alternate language credits and stuff. So make sure you check those out. There are two. But I like the episode. I thought it was pretty cool. Of course, first things first, there was no other character. There was no Mephisto or extra this or extra that. It was always just Wanda and just Agatha. So I was like, okay, they made that official. Sadly, they also made it official that they were just effing with us. And I was like, a lot of people said the same thing I said. I was like, I feel like it would be dumb for them to do it. Like, I get that they could just to be like, here's a nod. But everyone's going to feel the same way about it. Like, why the F did they do that? Funny name, though. I mean, Ralph Boner is hilarious. I mean, when she said it, I said the same thing. I was like, yeah, Boner. Boner is funny. That's funny. But that does suck. So, it, of course, wasn't actually Quicksilver. He wasn't pulled from another universe or anything like that. It was just a dude who was an actor, and they just got him, and then that was really it. So, that sucked. I was just like, dang, I would have loved it if that was just their introduction to it. And honestly, that could have been their introduction, and then they still didn't do anything after, because technically they're going into the multiverse anyway. That could have been like their first introduction, and no one actually realizes what's going on. I would have loved that. And they just threw that hint in there, but sadly that's not the case. So it is what it is. We'll obviously still be getting the multiverse going forward. But the episode kind of pans out pretty much exactly how I expected it to. I was like, all right, if they're truly wrapping it up, they have to go through these fights. They have to do this. They have to do that. They have to do the other. So I like the way it was handled. First off, let's talk about Vision. I mentioned I don't think they're going to keep like White Vision as White Vision for a super long time, but they're clearly going to do it at least for one movie. I assume he's going to show up in Multiverse of Madness. So that should be very interesting, because I think it'll kind of dive even more into kind of what they touched on in this. Or, they talk about the ship and stuff, which I thought was a really funny scene, because he's like, have you heard about, something, whatever, of Theseus' ship? And he's just like, naturally, like, yeah, of course, dude, I'm fucking, I know everything. So it was just funny to me, because I knew he was going to say that, like, obviously I have. So they go through that conversation, like, okay, well, which ship is the real ship? Once all the parts are replaced, what's the real ship? You don't have any of the memories. I don't have any of the chaos. I don't have the rot, and I don't have the death part. You're after death, so it's like that little piece in between is what's missing. But I can give you what they kept from you, and we can make, we can basically recreate the full Vision again. And I thought that was really cool, and they actually do it. And so he kind of gives him the actual memories back of dying and then coming back and dying again. He gives him those actual memories, and he's like, I'm Vision, which was also interesting, because he was like, I'm Vision, bye, and he just left the episode. I was like, oh, okay, I guess, all right, I guess he's curious about the world or something. But I'm like, if he got all those memories back, you think he'd be like, I'm Vision, I gotta help Wanda too. But he was just like, no, I'm Vision. And he's gone. So we'll see him later. We'll see him in a movie or something, or who knows? I doubt he'll be in Falcon Winter Soldier, but he might make a cameo appearance. Just be like, I'm Vision, and then he'll leave that too. Who knows? But he took off, and I was like, oh, interesting. He got his memories back, including the memories of the woman he loved, and he was out. He was like, she got her own thing. I'm gonna do something later. I'll see you guys later. So he leaves, and then we have Mind Stone Vision, which they explain at the very end, like, he, of course, which I believe I mentioned, he was basically created from the piece of the Mind Stone that was within her, which is why, of course, he, as he's being formed, he comes out looking like the Mind Stone. But I love the way that it was handled. Vision getting his memories back. I'm curious how that's going to play out in the future, since, like I said, he just took off here. So we'll see what happens in the future. We'll see how long they keep that version of the Vision. We also get to see that he's not fully white. Like, they have it where he has, like, slightest hint of, like, I can't even say gold, but like beige, like super bright beige and yellow. So I was like, okay, they gave him like a slight hint of color. They also gave him the evil eyebrows, like the way that they did the makeup. They have the indentations like on where his eyes are. It's like a bit more pronounced, so he looks evil the whole time. Like, if you go back and watch, it's almost impossible not to notice when they're looking at each other. He always looks mean, and it's like, oh, this is how he's evil. He's got like really thick eyebrows. He's got like this arch right here. And it's like they give him the Terminator move where it's like, even though he's a robot, let's just make it look like he's angry all the time. So like they stuck it out like just a tiny bit and you can see the indentation and he just looks mad the whole time as he's talking. I was like, that's super funny. And it's very subtle, but at the same time it's also insanely obvious that they did that. So I like that because it just made me laugh. I was like, they just gave him like the evil eyebrows so that he was mad all the time. But I thought it was cool. So, the fight scene of them, they're flying up and down, they're phasing through each other and stuff. I like the action pretty much all the way throughout. And then once all that's said and done, we of course have Wanda versus Agatha, and then they're having their crazy battle where it's like, oh, let me throw some cars at you, let me whip these kids on the ground and stuff like that. And then it gets to the townspeople, and that was really cool. That was actually like two of my favorite parts of the whole episode, just having to see Wanda deal with the realization of what she'd done to these people, where it's like, like, please just let my, like they show Dottie, and she's just like, please just let my daughter wake up. Like, let her leave the house and stuff. They bring the whole kids back thing. And it's like, please, just let my daughter leave the house. Let her wake up. Let her at least, like, enjoy this half version of life that you forced us all into. And then everybody else is kind of freaking out. And then when everyone's, like, completely released by the end of the series and everything's all said and done, she just kind of has to walk through the town and everybody just gives her all these evil looks. And it's like, I see where they're coming from. I mean, these people have been trapped for weeks now, and it's just like they understood what was happening. Like, they mentioned when they go to sleep, they have her nightmares. I'm like, that's terrifying. Like, just thinking of that, I'm like, wow, they suffered. We already knew they were suffering, and we knew that there were elements, literally from the first episode, there were elements of them actually breaking free, where it's like some part of them recognizes that they're being tortured. And then just to be like, every night we go to sleep, the only thing we can do is just be trapped. And like, we know what's happening. We're just puppets, kind of just stuck talking like we would never talk and just doing all these dumb things. And then when we go to sleep, seemingly one moment of freedom, we have your nightmares, that has to be effed up. I mean, considering she's seeing, a dead husband or dead boyfriend, dead brother, all this craziness. It's like, that has to be bad. And then that's just them. Nightmares at night, horror when you're awake. And it's just like, that just sucks. So I completely understand that they all kind of were giving her the evil look, like, please leave our really ugly looking I mean, granted that, that's because of the snap, everything is run down. I totally understand that. But it's like, just please leave us alone. We hate you. It's like, yeah, I get where they're coming from. And she was right. Like, even if they knew, like, I gave up this fake version, of my kids and, having a husband and stuff like that, they would not care. It's like, we literally, like, that was fake to begin with. Our actual lives were destroyed. Like, who cares about you? Like, I totally get what she meant when she's like, them knowing that would mean nothing, and it really wouldn't. But I like those two scenes just for her having to, like, face everyone as they're flipping out, like, you did this to us, you, like, ruined us, we were tortured while we were awake, we were tortured while we were asleep. So I like those two scenes for sure. The fight between Agatha and Wanda was really cool, especially, obviously, when it gets to, like, the end point. So we're going through the whole episode, I'm like, all right, something's happening here, like, Wanda's losing her powers because that's Agatha's whole thing, is like she just absorbs magical abilities. It's like, okay, well, that's pretty simple. Like, you have to find a way to not allow her to absorb your magic. So it's like, how does that work out? So they're going back and forth. They're playing their mind games. Agatha's like, hey, let me unlock a couple of people. Be like, here's what you've done. You could let this all go. Very simple, but look what you're doing. Crazy, crazy, crazy. Scarlet Witch. And so then it's like, all right. Wanda's like, well, let's F with you then. So she tries to get in her head, and then I don't know what happened there. It was almost like she tried to trick her. She puts her on the stake, and it's like, look what you've done, all this craziness, and like this and that. And then all the witches wake up, and it's like, Wanda. I was like, man, the Crypt Keepers, they never disappoint. It was just a creepy scene, and it's like, how are they turning against her? And they don't actually exist. This is like a memory, and somehow, like, she's so evil. She time traveled through a memory almost. Like, they woke up from the dead and were like, you're bad. It's like, that's such a crazy thing to have happen when you're supposed to be in someone's brain. And it's just like, okay, that's cool, I guess. And then the crown starts to form. And so then they have their crazy super CG sky battle where it's like, oh, it's, red thunder and stuff like that. And so I knew something was happening. Like, Wanda's, she's just hurling, we're just going to say fireballs. Magic missiles, there we go. So she's just like, magic missile, magic missile. And it was like, she's missing a lot, but she's also hitting a lot. And I'm like, this seems oddly coordinated. I'm like, something is happening here. I couldn't tell what it was, but I'm like, something is going on. Because they keep showing it. Like, every time she would miss, they would specifically show that she hit the barrier. And I'm like, they don't need to show that, like, every single time. What is going on? And so I thought maybe she was trying to like overload Agatha's abilities, because that's what people do like all the time. Like, oh, that person absorbs power. Give them too much power, and it always works. That's how it works every time. So I was like, maybe that's what she's trying to do. So she ends up giving her all her power away, and then we have like the classic little ending evil speech, and it's like, oh, you looking ugly, bitch, and all this stuff. Like, obviously she didn't say that, but Wanda was looking ugly. So she tries to hit her with like the final blast, and nothing happens. And it's like, what's going on? So then we see all the runes and stuff around the hex. I was like, genius. That's genius. I don't 100% know how that involves Wanda getting her powers back, but considering chaos magic is just like, she's powerful enough to do literally anything. So it's like, my powers didn't really involve absorbing other people's magic, but now they do, because I got that. I got this idea from you to block your magic, and I also got the idea of stealing all your magic from you. So she sucks in all her magic. She gets the costume. She gets the crown. The costume looks good. I like the crown. I like the design of it. She's got the forearm bands. She's got the dress and everything. And I was like, okay, it looks cool. It's a good modern representation of the Scarlet Witch costume. So I think it actually looks pretty sick. I definitely enjoy it. So we finally officially have the Scarlet Witch. They do reference that the book is the Darkhold. For anyone who does not know what that is, they do say it. It's the Book of the Damned. But for my fellow Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. fans, it's back. It's back. It's not, I don't think it'll, who knows what they're really going to do with it this time. Obviously, everybody treats Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. like crap, including Marvel pretty much. It's like, it's not really canon. It was supposed to be, and then there were weird behind the scenes issues. So it's like, no, that's its own thing. It has nothing to do with my movies and stuff. So unfortunately, that just is what it is in its own universe. They could bring it back. If they're really doing multiverse, I hope they give some love to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I really enjoyed it, especially when they did the Darkhold. Like, honestly, there are a couple of seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that are like just right up there with some of the stuff that happens in the movies, honestly. And the Darkhold is one of them, because, man, they had Ghost Rider in that season. It was Robbie Reyes, so it wasn't Johnny Blaze on the motorcycle. But if you thought a motorcycle with flaming wheels was sweet, you should see like a classic muscle car with 4 flaming wheels. Like, it was one of the coolest things ever. Like, Ghost Rider in that was so sweet, and it involved the Darkhold and all sorts of madness. So you should watch that season. Like, just watch that season. At the very least, you'll get a badass, Ghost Rider, and you'll get some info on the Darkhold. But it is the Darkhold officially, and I'm excited to see what they do with that. They already kind of touch on it a little bit with the post-credit scene, which I'll still wait to get to that. But she goes through, she absorbs her abilities, and it's like, all right, I'm going to trap you here. So she turns Agatha back into the nosy neighbor. Everyone else is freed. The hex is starting to come in, and we get to see the whole town kind of forming back together. And I thought it was great. The way that they ended everything, and it was emotional. It's like, the kids don't really know they're going to disappear. So it's like, thanks for, choosing me to be your mom and stuff like that. And it was, it's very emotional and stuff. And they have their, final conversation, and Vision like, exactly what am I? And so he's part of the Mind Stone that was within Wanda, and he's, her love kind of manifested, and sorrow, all these things wrapped into one. And I was like, this is really cool, and it's very emotional and stuff. And then everything goes away, and she's just in the empty plot of land, and she just pops her hood up, and then she walks through town. And so that leads to Photon getting her post-credit scene where, this random agent calls into the theater. And I was like, they're either going to show Captain Marvel, and then it took a couple seconds, I was like, or she's a shapeshifter. And I was like, yeah, of course she's shapeshifting. So we got a scroll. She's like, Nick Fury wants to see you up in space. And, she says old friend, but that's obviously who she meant. So Nick Fury wants to see her up in space. So she's going to be doing, the classic sword stuff, which involves intergalactic things. So that was pretty cool. Photon also had another amazing scene when Hayward was just like, oh, kids, nah. And he was just going to shoot them in the face, I guess, which was just crazy. Like, I mean, I know they're fake, but he did not care at all. It was like, I don't care at all. He got out of that car and was like, I'm just going to start shooting. And then she got in the way, and he was like, I'm just going to keep shooting. Like, he shot through her like 3 or 4 times, and it was like the one bullet that went past her. Wiccan actually caught it. So I was just like, this dude is just crazy. Like, obviously, he was always like the villain. He was the bad guy. But I was like, dang, he was just going to shoot these fake kids. And then she got in the way, and he was just like, whatever. And I'm going to just keep shooting. Like, she blocked one bullet. He didn't know if she could block all those bullets or have them, like, phase through her, which I thought was an amazing representation of her power, where the bullets don't just hit her. They actually hit her and, like, slow down. It was like they hit gel, and then they just slow down and, like, come out of her back. I was like, that's actually a very cool representation of what she can do when it comes to, like, physical threats and things like that. She almost has, is like a half version of Vision's ability to, like, phase through stuff, where with him it's just like, oh, that thing flew right through me like air. With her, it still has to impact her, and then she can slow it down, utilizing, her abilities, and it kind of goes through her as if she's gel or something. So I was like, all right, I want to see them do that way more. Like, you know, if she's in a hand-to-hand fight and somebody, you know, that won't really happen too often, I'm sure. But if she's in a hand-to-hand fight and somebody's like trying to stab her, she could just let it like slowly hit her, and she would almost be one of the characters that, you know, if you get hit, you know, sand characters do it and mud characters do it, where it's like, oh, they get hit and then the person's trapped inside of them. So like if someone tries to stab her, she could almost like solidify and just keep the knife within her, and it doesn't actually hurt her, and then they're just stuck, and she can probably just pop it out and it's like boom, no biggie, and she has a knife now. So I'm like, they can do a lot with that based on what they showed. So I thought that was a really cool moment. Of course, the kids fighting was actually really cool. And then they disappear. We get our post-credit scene. It was like, all right, she's going to space. Credits keep rolling. Then we have our post-credit scene. So Wanda's already taken off. She leaves town. Everything's, you know, kind of going back to normal. We have Wu, you know, kind of giving directions and stuff. So everything is cool in the town, you know, for now. It's back to normal, at least. And so they just have this random shot where, hopefully you've seen this. If not, it's not that. It's like any post-credit scene. Like, it's just a scene. It's like a couple seconds, and it's just, here's a tease for the future. It's a decent tease, though. I will say that it's a really good tease. So she's in the woods by herself. I guess she just made a house, and so she's, you know, she's not even just in the woods. She's like in the mountains by herself. So they go across the water and all this stuff, and I'm like, all I'm thinking is X-Men because it's cold, and I'm like, what if they just show Wolverine? I knew that wasn't gonna happen, but it was really funny to think that. So they're just zooming in. It gets to her in her little cabin, and she's just sitting outside. She goes, she pours herself some tea, and I was like, I wonder if they're going to show, like, White Vision, if they actually did end up meeting or something like that, because she's drinking tea, and then it goes past her into, like, the bedroom, and then we see the Scarlet Witch. Like, we have Wanda in the front, and then Scarlet Witch is, like, in the bedroom with the Darkhold, and she's, like, going through the pages, going through all this dark magic and stuff, and then we hear the kids, and they're screaming, they're like, you know, Mom, help us, and then it cuts. And I was like, okay, so they're definitely bringing the kids back, which is, I mean, you know, that's classic comics. That's exactly what they did in the comic books. Like, she eventually ends up getting them for real. So they're bringing the kids in. They're definitely doing Young Avengers. Like, they have no, like, everyone knew that they were doing Young Avengers, but now it's like, yep, we're definitely doing, you know, Hawkeye's daughter. So Kate Bishop is going to be there. And now it's like, yep, we're totally saving the kids. We're bringing them back at some point, maybe in Multiverse of Madness. I am curious if they're going to do it, you know, in basically, you know, the very next movie, which I think we still have, I forgot the slate, if I'm being totally honest. I know Shang-Chi is supposed to come out. That's like the only thing I care about right now. I just want a really badass martial arts Marvel movie. So that's the only movie that I know is coming out. And Black Widow is supposed to, I hope they make that junk free, because I don't want to pay $30 extra for that. But they won't. They won't. But that's coming out. I know Shang-Chi is coming out. I think Eternals is supposed to come out this year too. So there's a bunch of stuff that's supposed to be happening. And I think, you know, I was going to say WandaVision, but I think Doctor Strange 2 isn't supposed to be until next year. So we still have like a couple of movies, and they might show hints of some of the stuff that happens. They probably won't, because, you know, that's just how they do their stuff, especially when it concerns the movies. They might slightly reference it, but they won't give us any advancement, especially considering she took off and, you know, just left on her own. No one even really knows what's going on with her right now. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going to ultimately end up playing out. Maybe she will end up being the villain for Doctor Strange 2, because they do reference that with the whole Darkhold thing, like, oh, you're, you know, being the Scarlet Witch and the Chaos Magic, you're more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme, which is Doctor Strange's other name. For anyone who didn't know that, that was a Doctor Strange reference. He's the Sorcerer Supreme. So it'll be interesting to see how that ends up playing out. Like, does she actually become a villain, especially with the whole split that they show in this in-credit sequence? I was like, I didn't expect them to represent her abilities in that way, where she literally like splits apart, because that's like a recipe for disaster, where it's like, oh, she has the ability to split apart, and, you know, everyone's afraid of the Scarlet Witch because she's evil and this and that, and then it's like, oh no, she's just using her powers, and then something crazy happens, and then with her being split apart, it's like, it's good Wanda Maximoff and the evil destructive Scarlet Witch. So they're probably gonna actually end up doing that, where she uses her powers, but she still doesn't have enough control over it, or someone else does something that she wasn't anticipating, and then it's like, I'm going to split it down the middle and make two actual entities, and then we have to deal with the Scarlet Witch. So I think that'll be cool, and then, you know, they defeat her, and then she gets her abilities back, and they kind of do what they did with Vision, where you make kind of a new whole, you know, that sort of thing. So they could totally do that, and I think that'll be very interesting to see, and actually have Scarlet Witch as a full-on villain, which they could. That could be like Avengers-style level, considering her actual abilities. But I don't think they'll take it that far. But I am excited. I'm looking forward to what they do. I'm curious when they're going to bring these kids back, when they're going to get into talking about the Young Avengers and stuff like that. I'm just curious how they're going to handle those movies and stuff as well. So there's a lot to look forward to. So this is leading into the multiverse. Sadly, they teased us, they tricked us, they got us. So we'll see. We'll have to just wait for the X-Men. We'll have to wait for Fantastic Four. Paul Bettany was talking about himself. Everybody mentioned that when the other Vision thing came in. Unfortunately, that seems to be true, that he was talking about acting with himself. So, sadly, no giant cameos like we were hoping for. But it was still really good. I still really enjoyed it. I'm very excited to see where we go next. So, now we're just on the Falcon and Winter Soldier. They're just going to be beating people up. They may or may not reference some of the weirdness that went on in this show. But either way, I'm looking forward to what they're going to be doing with Scarlet Witch next, what they're going to be doing with Vision next, and him just kind of being his own thing. Because it really was weird that he left. Am I the only one that thought that? Because he got his memories back in the middle of this fight, and he was like, I'm out. And he just left. And I'm like, how did he get all the memories back, but he's still like cold and uncalculable? They literally even changed his eyes to be like, he's more human now. Like, he doesn't have the robotic, blue eyes. He has his actual eyes. Like, I'm Vision. And then he left and just never came back. He didn't help. And I was just like, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. But maybe that's just me. I would love to know your thoughts on that. And the series finale as a whole. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. Obviously, theories, post-credit scene, going to space, doing the whole classic comic sword deal with Nick Fury and stuff. Post-credit scene with the Darkhold and the kids coming back and this whole Scarlet Witch split thing. I hadn't even thought of that. I was like, okay, so she's not going to be a villain. A lot of people mention that. Like, she was technically the villain for the show. But I'm like, they could easily do something with that whole, like, oh, I can split myself into basically two beings. The Scarlet Witch being its own thing, that's bad. And they can do something with that. So I'm kind of excited. I hope that they make her a villain. I think that'll be so fun to watch, to see a good, like, magical villain. Like, they could do a lot, honestly, with Doctor Strange. There might be too much to do, honestly, because I'm like, they could do multiverse. The villain from the first, or the end of the first Doctor Strange movie, for anyone who doesn't remember, his buddy Mordo, who was like, I'm tired of magic, and he was trying to, like, get rid of all magic on Earth. So I'm like, they could bring him in, and him and Doctor Strange might have to team up, and then he'll be, like, a villain for the third Doctor Strange movie. They have a lot of possibilities for what can happen in the next Doctor Strange movie, because they're doing the multiverse, but they could still do Scarlet Witch by herself as a villain. So I'm like, there's so much potential. There's so much they could do. We'll just have to wait and see. But like I said, I would love to know your thoughts. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.